everybody. I imagine there's going to be more people coming in as the event continues, but we have a nice showing for so early in the morning. Thank you all for coming out. We're very excited to have this event called Basic Income Guarantee. The time is right, and to have a discussion here in Nova Scotia around this. I want to draw your attention to our sponsors before we begin. The Halifax Public Libraries, of course, is co-sponsoring this event. United Way as well, Dalhousie University, both the faculties of health professions and the faculty of arts and social sciences. And we've also received some donations from, and also the mayor's office. And we've also received some donations from TD Bank and from Sobeys and Superstore. So we've been very well supported in this event, and I want to thank our co-sponsors and for all of their help. I want to draw your attention as well to Basic Income Canada Network, which is a co-sponsor of the event, and to our local group, Basic Income Nova Scotia. And we have a table on the side with information about basic income, and also a sign-up sheet for people who would like to participate in planning and working towards basic income in Nova Scotia and Canada. So without further ado, I would like to begin the introductions to this mini conference. The first person that we would like to welcome to the floor is Mayor Mike Savage, and one of the members of our planning committee has a special introduction for the mayor. So if I could ask Sharon to come forward.
I'm going to stand here so everyone can see me. I'm so beautiful. Anyhow, Mandy told me I got to tell a story about her. That I had a minute to introduce Mayor Savage. Anyhow, she didn't see me because we were talking on the phone, but I gave her my mad pouty look. This is it. Anyhow, because I don't know who could introduce Mayor Savage in a minute. I have known Mayor Savage for about maybe 6 years when I was working with Canada Without Poverty. I sensed from the start a strong passion and commitment to social justice and eliminating poverty. Someone told me that he came across this honestly. His father was a doctor who provided free health care. Can you hear me? Free health care for the poor in the North End area. And I thought to myself, this makes sense. This kind of commitment doesn't come out of thin air. It is instilled in you from your youth. Mike, you had good teachers in your parents. The poor need an ally, someone to speak up for the voiceless and overlooked in society. And that person, and it's really important to have people in public office to provide that kind of support to the poor, which Mike does. So anyhow, I want to raise a glass or a microphone. Thank you very much for everything you do. Thank you and for being my mentor, and you know that I always got your back.
A giant in the community, I can tell you. Seriously. And I would just say, in terms of the introduction, thank you very much for that. And my father did a lot of interesting things in terms of social justice. My mother, in a much less celebrated public way, was probably even more of a mentor to the 7 kids that she had in terms of what they should give back for the fortune that we've been given. Thank you, Mandy, and thank you, Sharon. Good morning to everybody, Andy, our MP, and to my Deputy Mayor, Matt, and Wei, and ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see Rob Rayner here in Halifax. We spent a fair bit of time when I was a member of Parliament talking about issues. Most of that time he was with, I guess, Canada Without Poverty at the time. Rob and I are doing work on the basic income. I want to welcome you. How many of you are not from Halifax? So quite a few, that's great. So I want to welcome you to Halifax, and I want to welcome you to this wonderful public library, which is not only a place for books and learning, it's a place for interaction and coming together as a community. We're proud of it in Halifax. I mentioned I was a member of Parliament. I worked on what I think is a famous report, but nobody seems to know about. Some of you in this room would. Stella would, I know, and yeah, absolutely, Amy and Sharon, who was at some of those meetings. Over a couple of parliaments and about 3 or 4 proroguements, which meant we had to reconstitute committees, we put together a report on reducing poverty in Canada, a framework. Traveled the country, heard from many, many people, and at the end of the day, we put forward a report that made, I can't even remember, Rob might know or somebody else, I think around 70 or so recommendations in terms of what we could do to eliminate poverty in Canada. It was a good committee. Most of the time it was chaired by a Conservative MP, which is the rule, by the name of Dean Allison, who was a very committed guy and was very fair and very committed to this issue. At the end, it was taken over by somebody who I don't think was as good of a chair, that's not good English, but as positive a chair as he had been. But the committee worked well. Tony Martin, who's an NDP MP, was the NDP member on the committee, was just a tireless champion for these issues, and I really enjoyed it. Yves Lessard of the Bloc was a very active member. We produced this report after such a long time, hearing from so many people, and great recommendations and great discussion. And we produced it into the House of Commons in, I think, November of 2010. At around the same time as the Senate under Art Eggleton had done a similar piece of work. But we brought ours into the House of Commons and produced it. And as is the rule, within 45 days, the government responded and said, thank you for the work you did, but we're good. We have the universal child care benefit. We've reduced the GST, so we're good. Basically saying there isn't any poverty in Canada that the government can fix. They also said it's not really a federal responsibility. And that was their response to the UN when the United Nations said that Canada doesn't have an anti-poverty plan, one of the few industrialized nations that doesn't have it. I think that says a lot about how people view poverty in Canada. The universal child care benefit now gone, and hopefully forgotten. Some of the other things that are alleged to reduce poverty have not done that. Now's the time to do it. The idea of a basic income is not a radical idea. People would have you say it's a radical idea. It's not a radical idea. It's been put forward by a number of people in Canada. I mentioned Art Eggleton, who's a crusader. Hugh Segal, Conservative MP, he would say progressive Conservative MP, has been a long-time advocate of this. But this is not just about social cohesion. In my view, this is also about economic development in the country, and no less a conservative icon in the world than Richard Nixon mused about a basic income in terms of what it might do in the U.S. I don't see Donald Trump talking about it right now very much. But it has been around, the idea's been around, and why is it important now? I think it's important now because I think there is an opportunity. There is a momentum around this. There have been reports that have talked about the basic annual income. We have got a federal government now that has had the sense to say, not only do we have a physical infrastructure deficit in this country, but we have a social infrastructure deficit in this country. I think that that's important. Minister Duclos has talked about the basic annual income. We have provincial governments that are talking about looking at the basic annual income and instituting it. Most of you will know about the famous example in Dauphin, Manitoba, 30, 40 years ago in the 70s. So the idea is not radical. People are talking about it. The United Way and here and many other places are talking about this. At the table we call the Big City Mayor's Table, Don Iveson, Nenshi, myself, Jim Watson, many others are talking about this. And poverty is going to be a big focus of the big city mayors in the next 2 years. We've decided to make poverty sort of the focus of the work that we do, because the cities is where the poverty issues are sort of most directly brought home. Here in Halifax, I'm proud that with folks like our deputy mayor and with Wayne Mason, that we're looking at issues and taking action. For the first time ever, the city was involved in a Housing First project here, which we announced last year. We're looking at health, we're looking at social exclusion. It's kind of easy for a mayor to say, you guys should get together, provincial and federal governments, and figure out how to do the basic annual income. We have to be at the table. We recognize that, and we want to be at the table, and we know there's no easy solution. But I do believe this is the time, with all those things that are happening in the community, in our country, that this is the time for us to take a serious look at the basic annual income, which is good. But I really think the bad part of that is if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. So this is when it has to happen. And as I used to say to many people when I would go around the country and we talk about poverty, and when we were doing the Human Resources Report in the House of Commons, it's time to activate non-activists. It's time to activate non-activists. A lot of people, probably many in this room, you do what you do because you believe you're doing it. Some of you do it because you think it's a religious passion to promote equality. Some of you do it because you just think it's the right thing to do, but your natural instinct is not necessarily to be political. Non-activists need to step up and make poverty a political issue and make sure that all politicians understand that this is going to be not only a voting issue, but this is how we're going to judge government. So I encourage you to be involved in things like this. I want to thank the organizers. Mandy, to you, the first time you came to see me, we sat in the office and, and I said, what can we do to help? And we figured out how we could help. Excited to be here. I do think I won't be here all day, but I'm going to be following this very closely. I thank folks for coming down. I look forward to hearing Wayne shortly as well, who's also been a great crusader around here on these issues. I think it's the time in Canada that we take a look at all the effort, all the money, all the resources, all the fuss and frustration, all the time we put into maintaining poverty, and say maybe it's time to start eradicating poverty. And I think the basic annual income may be the best way to do it. So I wish you well in your deliberations today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Savage, for your wonderful words and for being there for us and supporting us when this was just a beginning idea and encouraging us to move forward with it. So without the support from the mayor from the very beginning, both conceptually and monetarily, this would not have happened today. So thank you. I want to now introduce the Member of Parliament from Halifax, Andy Fillmore, to give a few words. As you all know, Andy Fillmore is a new Member of Parliament. He beat out the NDP candidate, Megan Leslie, surprisingly to some people, in this last election, and the seat now is a Liberal seat. And the government, of course, we understand, we know is a Liberal government, and the Liberal government is embracing basic income to a certain extent. So we are so happy to have Andy Fillmore here as a representative of that government, and recognizing that when they were running for election, they passed 2 resolutions in favor of a basic income, and they now, as I understand it, are exploring issues of basic income at that level. So we see that as a very positive development. Andy is well known in the Halifax community. He's an architect who graduated from Tufts University before it was part of Dow. And many of you probably know his involvement in Halifax by Design, an important initiative in this city. So without further ado, Andy, where did you... I would like to welcome you to the floor and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much, Mandy, to you and your team putting together a very ambitious and full schedule. And I won't speak for long, but I was glad that the mayor talked about the role of the federal government in this issue. And you can see why Mike has been such a great friend and mentor to me as I strike off on this new path. Importantly, Mike mentioned the Big City Mayor's Caucus. And the reason that's important is that that's going to be the touch point for the federal government for important municipal issues like housing. I'm involved with some other MPs in Ottawa right now, and we're creating a kind of a mirror cabinet of the big city mayors, so that for each big city mayor there'll be an MP, and that will be the interface that will land that federal infrastructure money correctly and in an informed way in the communities. So I invite you to stay tuned for how all that unrolls. Since my election on October 19th, I've spent a lot of time meeting with Haligonians on all kinds of issues, and some of them are, many of those meetings are very good news stories about what Haligonians are up to, but some of them are also very hard meetings to have. And I just want to share one of those with you today. The Executive Director of Housing Nova Scotia, Linda Wilson, invited me to visit with her back in February, specifically to visit the Metro Turning Point Men's Shelter on Barrington Street. And let me just start by saying that building is deceptively big looking on the outside. It's actually very small inside. I was quite shocked at the cramped conditions where people sleep. Specifically the bunk room. It's very, very personal. A little closer. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that. So specifically the bunk room where the lights are always on. There are 80 bunks. The men are hot bedding, so when one man leaves bed, there's another one ready to take his place. They also showed me the kitchen, which had been built as a result of a generous corporate donation, which was full of donated pots and pans and cooking implements, but notably absent of food. Now, unfortunately, Metro Turning Point relies heavily on donations from Tim Hortons for a good part of the year. Big old Timbits, muffins, and that kind of thing. And that is a very sugary, carb-laden diet that Linda told me tends to exacerbate the irritability and of the guests and some of the other challenges that they face. And that's where some of the 1,700 annual shelter users sleep each night in Halifax. 1,700 annually in the city. And I absolutely commend Linda and her team for doing what they do with what they have. They are tireless miracle workers down there. But I can't help but think that our community, and certainly our elected officials, need to bring a new focus to solving issues like homelessness and poverty in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. And I think that the federal budget that was released just about 3 weeks ago starts to do that. It's going to go a long way. One example is the massive investment in social infrastructure. And within that, $2.3 billion over the next 2 years on improving housing affordability in Canada, access to safe and adequate and affordable housing, including shelter for those who are dealing with violence in their lives. And another great example is an increase to the guaranteed income supplement for low-income seniors, which will help to lift almost 1 million seniors up out of poverty and give them a better life. The truth is, and we'll hear about it today, poverty is a bad thing. It's bad for Nova Scotia. It's bad for everyone in this room, regardless of our income. It's bad for the economy. It's bad socially. 1 in 8 people in Halifax live in poverty. 19% of our kids in Halifax live in poverty. We can do better. We need to do better. As some of you know, and the mayor mentioned it, Jean-Yves Duclos, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, has spoken in the media as recently as a couple of days ago about the idea of a guaranteed minimum income. And we're just so excited about that and about how today is going to help to accelerate and make that a reality. Another step we've taken is the new Canada Child Benefit, which replaces the kind of stingy and regressive universal child care benefit that preceded it. And it's going to help the families that need it most and not help families that don't need the help. So it's going to put the money where it will have the greatest impact. So as an example, a single parent making $30,000, he or she will be $6,000 tax-free dollars better off annually. And a family of two-parent family with 2 kids making $45,000 will have $4,000 a year tax-free to apply toward the things that they need to do. But absolutely more can be done, and our federal government is paying attention to this. We're looking forward to working with provinces and municipalities and to explore the full possibility of that guaranteed minimum income. And I know that all of you in this room will be watching closely how those conversations unfold. On a personal note, I'm going to be listening very closely today. I'm going to be looking closely at the outcome, the summary from today. And beyond today, I want to extend a warm invitation to each one of you. Please contact me anytime. Our offices are at 1888 Brunswick Street. We're easy to find. I'd love to have a conversation with any one of you at any time to help to make this guaranteed income a reality. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Andy, for those wonderful remarks. I have neglected to pass out a thank you card to Okay, I want to introduce our last speaker who will give some welcoming remarks today, and that is Wei Mason, who is a city councillor here in Halifax. Wei Mason is a well-known activist in the community, well-known for his support of the arts and his participation in the arts, and we are very pleased to have him here to talk about his views on basic income and to provide some welcoming remarks to you as well. Please come up, Wei. Yeah, it's really exciting to us to have the mayor, somebody from the federal government, and somebody from the city council all showing support for this particular concept. So thank you very much.
There you go. I'm more in instructor mode from NSCC than politician mode this morning. And I'm a little self-conscious because the mayor asked me if I was going to tuck in my shirt or not, and I said no, because that's not happening. We're all here down at the library, and we get, yes, thank you, Councillor Whitman doesn't have this tucked in either. I want to acknowledge that Jennifer Watts is here, everybody's favorite councillor according to the Post. So welcome to District 7, Halifax South Downtown. I'm often accused of representing the South End. I represent up to Quinpool Road and Cornwallis Street on Godgen. So Dee Dee's Ice Cream is in my district, and former Island Creek is in Jennifer's district. Mandy emailed me and said, would you like to come to this conference and speak? And I responded, I think within 3 minutes, and said, yes, absolutely, I'd love to. And the reason why is that, well, my mom's from Amherst, my dad joined the Navy, he's from Edmonton, and as I became, aware of politics as a young man growing up in Dartmouth in the 80s, I'd be slid books, things by Tommy Douglas, things by Ernest Manning, right? Prairie politics, right? From the left and the right. And all of them talked about making Canada a more just place, fairer place, right? Whether they were on the right or on the left. And the mayor talked about how Senator Siegel, a conservative, has been the voice carrying the torch for 15, 20 years on the guaranteed income in Ottawa, right? So it's not a right or a left thing. It's not a radical new idea thing. It's something that's been around for a really long time. And interestingly enough, since the election, people in my family, Michelle Strum and my wife and kids, we've been talking about guaranteed income. So we had actually just had a Sunday dinner. The next day I get invited to this conference. I'm like, good, we're all going to get information. We're going to know what we're talking about. Now, the municipality normally is all about boring things from a social justice point of view. Paving roads, plowing roads, then paving where the plowing damaged the roads the next day. But we also we do have a role in building strong communities, recreation, community outreach. This library and the other 13 libraries that we're all working on bringing up to the same or similar standard to this library. But when we're talking about this kind of thing, we're talking about trying to find ways to allow people, as I said, to live in a way that is just, that allows them to have dignity. right? And how that impacts me as a councillor is that because we're the government that's closest to the people, even though I have no direct responsibility for any of the things that are bringing people down who live in poverty, I get the calls. My office gets the calls, council support in the mayor's office gets the calls. The mayor says all the time around the affordable housing, I don't remember who you're quoting, but you say all the time, the feds have the money, the province has the responsibility, and the municipality has the problem. I think we can say that about guaranteed income, and I think we can say that about all issues to do with poverty. So I'm really excited to be here today to learn, to listen, and I think that the last note I wrote on my little piece of paper here is, I first talked to my father about this in 1984 when I was in grade 8 social science, and my awesome professor Rita Matthews at Ellendale Junior High was talking about social justice. I don't think we called it that in the 1980s. And so talk is cheap, it's time to do stuff, right? So let's talk today, but then let's work on action and change after. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rick. Okay, well, with those very inspiring opening remarks, we are ready to move into our program, and the first speaker of our program is Wayne McNaughton. And we would like to give a little introduction to Wayne as he makes his way up.
Wayne is a Halifax poverty activist who approaches solutions to poverty using a human rights lens. Though he has worked on issues such as food security and housing and homelessness, he was the only chair of a federally sanctioned community advisory board to ever have been homeless. He has mostly worked on poverty overall, being a member of groups at a local level with Community Advocates Network, a national level with Canada Without Poverty, and an international level with ADT Fourth World Movement. As a welfare recipient, he'll speak today about how a basic income would make his life better. And the title of his talk is Why I'm Looking Forward to Being 65.
Yes, it is working. Perfect. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, good to see so many people out here today. If only I could see you. That's just a little aside. Basically, I go to these meetings and there's a lot of people who want to talk to me and everything. I have very limited vision. I can see about 5 feet away from me, and that's about all. So I know that there's a lot of beautiful people in this place today, and I'm glad to see you all here. And you're beautiful because you're here, not because I can see you. You're all a blur, but you know, I know you're beautiful. I wanted to thank Pierre and Mandy for getting this thing, this conference organized. And really, it's, you know, this is something that is very, very important to me. Why am I looking forward to turning 65? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. The way we set up our income support systems in Canada, we have good supports for people that are 65. As was mentioned a moment ago, the government just recently increased the government guaranteed income supplement. Right now, and for the last about 20 years, I've been living on income assistance due to disability and things like that. It's a very, very difficult way to live. That's what I can say about it. It's subsistence existence, survival existence. You don't have any extra. You don't have a whole lot of options. When I turned 60, but basically my income consists of several different parts. It consists of a shelter allowance and a personal allowance from welfare, along with special needs allowances, and then the various tax credits that I'm eligible for. The tax credits that come out quarterly, but I'm going to give you a figure that's actually monthly. The tax credits include the GST credit, the affordable living tax credit, and the poverty reduction tax credit. All of those things put together give me an income of just slightly over $1,000 a month. An income that hasn't changed, by the way, since July of 2013. And there's there's no indication it's going to change in the near future either. That's just over $1,000 a month. I pay rent of $535 a month. That fortunately includes everything. That rent, I had the wonderful benefit of living with a nonprofit NGO that provides rented accommodation within the shelter allowance provided by income assistance. So that's a real blessing for me. So what's gonna happen when I turn 65? Well, that'll change. Actually, I wanted to mention as well that I will be receiving a CPP retirement pension very shortly, sometime this year. But that won't change my income, because every penny of that retirement pension will be clawed back from my income assistance check. That's how a last resort system works, and that's what we have for income support. Not just here in Nova Scotia. I don't want to blame Nova Scotia. This is a Canada-wide thing. This is how we do this stuff right across the country. The numbers may differ a little bit here and there, but the reality is every province and territory in Canada, every welfare provider in Canada, everyone living on welfare in this country is living below the poverty line. Every single person in this country living on welfare is living below the poverty line. When I turn 65, I'll be able to have old age security. I'll be eligible for that, and I thank the current government for restoring that age to 65. I was not in danger. I would have still got it at 65 under the changes that have been made, but I'm glad to see they've restored that to 65 again, or they're doing that. I would have the Canada pension that I'm going to be starting to receive very shortly anyway. And those two things in my case would add up to roughly what I'm getting right now from welfare. So you say, well, where's the big difference? The big difference is the guaranteed income supplement that low-income seniors are able to get. It is not exactly a basic income, but it's pretty close. It is a guaranteed annual income. It's not a perfect system, and I'm going to get into that a little bit as well, but it certainly will raise me up to a level where I'll have a little bit of spare income, a little bit of ability to do things. The biggest thing about income may well be that it's about choices, and it's about exclusion or inclusion. If you have enough income, you have some choices. You have the ability to be included. Poverty, best definition I've ever heard, is a person not having sufficient income to A, meet their basic needs, and B, and this is very important, participate in a normal way in the life of their community. That's what poverty is. But notice I'm saying not have enough income. One of the things that drives me crazy is when people sit there and start talking about, well, the solution to poverty is this and the solution to poverty is that. No, guess what? It's about money. It's about the money, stupid, as somebody once said, I think. And that's the thing. It's not only about money, but it's always about money. And that's how we measure poverty, and for good reason. We can talk about programs from now till the dogs come home, but we're not gonna solve the problem unless we start putting more money out there. What'll happen when I have that GIS along with the OAS and the CPP is my income is going to go up by approximately 40 to 50% when that happens. Don't get me wrong, I won't be wealthy. I won't be living off the hog, but I will be able to do a lot more things. I will be able to make a lot more choices. Right now, I worked for many, many years, and I made a pretty near middle-class income. When I was doing that, I used to eat meals out about 4 or 5 times a week. And I don't mean fast food. I'm talking about sit-down meals in restaurants. I'm a single guy. That was an easy way to do it. And I could certainly afford it. And I eat fast food as well, but that was something that I did. It was happy to sit-down meal in a restaurant. I don't do that right now. My budget for eating out is every 2 or 3 months going to Scotia Square. I go and pick myself up a couple of donuts at Tim's, that's my dessert. Then go across the aisle and pick up an Uncle Burger and a root beer at A&W. That's eating out for me right now. That's a luxurious experience for me right now. The other thing that affects, that changes, as I say, is exclusion and inclusion. People don't realize this sometimes, but most of the activities that we do that are social activities involve some money, whether it's money to get to the event, whether it's money to have a little bit of money when you get there. You know, if somebody says to you, oh, let's go for coffee, and you're sitting there calculating, well, it's 3 days till the end of the month, have I got enough money to buy a coffee? It's a decision. How many of you have to make that decision, have to make a conscious decision if someone says, you know, do you want to go for a coffee? About a budgetary decision. That's the kind of thing that can change. It will change for me when the guaranteed income supplement kicks in. And what we're talking about here today, that can change for every Canadian if we adopt a universal basic income in this country. Everyone can have some choices. And I say universal basic income, what does that mean? It means basically that every single Canadian would receive a check from the federal government every month for a certain amount of money, a sufficient amount of money to cover basic needs for people. And to put it into terms that probably would be realistic, probably somewhere in the neighborhood between $1,600 and $1,800 a month for every adult in the country. And it's important that it be universal, by the way. It's not means tested. It's not something that gets clawed back if you suddenly have more income. It's just automatically you receive that money. It's the best way to support people living in poverty, to help them get out of poverty. It can, in fact, would replace a number of government benefits without necessarily replacing government programs. The benefits it would replace would be welfare, for example, is the one that comes most to mind because it would render welfare obsolete. It would render the guaranteed income supplement obsolete. It would also perhaps, okay, maybe we keep on going with an old age security, but maybe we reduce the old age security somewhat because the need isn't going to be quite so much. Some of that is going to be taken up by this, and people will still be much better off than they are now. It doesn't need to replace contributory programs like CPP. Those should continue. It shouldn't replace tax benefits that people get, like the child tax benefit. Don't forget what I'm talking about is a check coming to every adult for the same amount. We're still going to need the child tax benefit in order to help people who have low incomes with the cost of child raising. This doesn't preclude having other government programs. It doesn't preclude having, for example, a housing program. It doesn't preclude having fully funded, taxpayer-paid for pharmacare. Imagine pharmacare with no premiums and no co-pays. You just go to the pharmacy and you get your prescription filled. That's the way it should be. That's the way it is in the developed world. The other side of the pond, mostly. We can do all that, and we can still have enough income. We are a very, very wealthy country. One of the things that irritates me, and I was glad to hear none of the politicians who spoke this morning use this word, but it does get used. People will say that poverty is complicated. Any politician that uses the word complicated, call bullshit. Because that's a buzzword that says, I don't want to deal with this, so I'll just say it's complicated. It's too complicated to deal with. Poverty isn't complicated. It's about people having enough income, as I say, to meet their basic needs and participate in society. Homelessness isn't complicated. It's about ensuring that there's enough affordable housing for everybody and ensuring that people have, again, enough income to pay for the housing that's available. Yes, homeless people quite often have other problems. Mental illness, addictions are very real issues among homeless people, but no more so than they are among the regular population. There's lots of people out there that have addictions and whatnot that are not homeless. Because why? Because they have enough money to pay for the housing that they need. And they can access, and because they have that housing, they can access the care and medical services that they need. The other part of this is the way that welfare treats people who manage to go out and try to find work for themselves. They say, well, we want you to get work. Well, for people that are disabled like myself, who really full-time, 35-hour-a-week job is not really an option for me because of my disabilities. And not all of them are visible. This cane gives an idea of one of them, but there's others. So I might be able to get some part-time work here and there, some contract work, maybe some work from home. I'm online a lot. And, but you know, guess what? What you're allowed to do on welfare, on income assistance, and this does vary from province to province, but there's something similar in just about every province. And that is, I get to keep $150 out of that. And for the rest, the government claws back 70%. They call it an employment incentive, believe it or not. But really what it means is that a de facto tax rate that the absolute lowest income Nova Scotians pay a higher de facto tax rate than the highest income Nova Scotians. There's no one in the $100,000 bracket paying 70% of their income in taxes. No one. But people at the low end pay that, get a tax back by government. What does a basic income do about that? Well, guess what? Basic income, that check comes regardless of what your income is. So you have whatever money you make, you keep. I mean, aside from paying your income taxes out of it, the regular income taxes, which are generally progressive and allow people with lower incomes to keep more of their money. That's the only thing that's going to come off it. It's not going to come off anything else. What does that mean for Nova Scotia? It means things like some of the industries that we hold dear. I mean, there's been a lot of talk lately for good reason about the creative industries in this province. Just imagine if someone who's a writer, a novelist, a playwright, someone who's a songwriter, a singer, performer, actor, had enough income coming in to pay their bills. And every dollar that they could make from their craft would go to increase their income. Imagine what that would do for creativity. Not having to leave the province to go find work somewhere else because you can no longer afford to live in Nova Scotia because you can't find work. That would be a huge benefit. And it adds to the economy. That applies, the same thing applies to small business people. Small business people, the benefit to startup companies and small business people and independent employers wanting to start up is enormous. You have that basic income. That income is there. So go and try and start up your business. If it works, all the better. You'll end up with more money. You'll end up better off. If it doesn't work, well, you still got enough to live on. Imagine organic farmers in this province. Imagine if you could have an organic farm without having to make all of your money off of the farm. That you could make money, that you have enough money to pay your basic bills. You can operate an organic farm, which are generally smaller scale farms than the commercial ones. And not only that, you can actually find employees locally to work for you to help you do the farming because they're not stuck with a clawback from welfare for doing a few hours work for you. Nice concept. And all of those things contribute to building a stronger economy for everyone because you have people able to use their skills, whatever those skills are, to contribute to the productivity of the society overall. That's the way it can work if we move to that basic income. Now, I wanted to say a word too about universality with regards to this because one of the things that gets talked about is, oh well, you know, I don't want you to send a check to the millionaires out there, to the 1%ers. But we need to have buy-in in order to make this work. way you get buy-in is making sure that everybody benefits from it, not just the poor. The biggest obstacle to doing any kind of effective welfare reform, and welfare reform is really not possible. The welfare system that we have in this country is broken badly and beyond repair and cannot be fixed. One of the reasons it cannot be fixed is anytime you try to talk about raising welfare rates to anything like livable amount, everybody screams and yells with justification, well, why are you helping them and you're not helping me? You want to take my tax money to help somebody else. Why aren't you helping me? We need to overcome that. We need to overcome that in order to be able to provide support to those who need it, but also support to those who may need it a little less, and even those that don't need it at all. Those that don't need it at all, odds are they're paying much more in taxes than they're going to get in benefit from this thing. And that's the other thing. It's not going to come out when we talk about, well, you're going to have to raise taxes to do this. Well, guess what? Taxes don't mean just income taxes. It means all the different kinds of taxes that government collects. So it doesn't mean your income taxes are going to go up to pay for a basic income. There's a lot of other ways government can raise revenue. You know, in the 1970s, the federal government got more money out of corporate taxes than they did out of personal income taxes. That's reversed now, quite reversed. There's no reason why we can't move backwards, at least to some extent, in that direction. Why is universality important other than that? Well, because universality, people get attached to it. They like it. They like their universal services. Try messing with Medicare and see how far it gets you. If you're a politician, try messing with free public education, K to 12, and see how far that gets you. Try saying that, for example, the municipal services, one of the first municipal services that came into being in North America was a fire service. We had a fire, before we had fire services in North America, in many cities, I think this is before Halifax even came into existence, but many cities that were existing in North America had private companies that used to go around and fight fires, and you paid a monthly fee to this company, and if your house or your business caught fire, they came around and put the fire out. If you hadn't paid your fee, well, they'd come around anyway and put out the fire if it spread to the neighbor's property who had paid the fee. It didn't take people a long time to figure out that wasn't a terribly good system. So I said, well, you know what, we should do this together. We should have a common fire service that's paid for out of tax dollars. And people got so attached to that one universal service. You know, I asked the councillors who were present, what happens when you try to reallocate money for fire services? What kind of reaction do you get from that? That's what happens when people have a universal service that they become attached to. And that's why the basic income needs to be universal. A lot of the money will come back from higher income individuals in the form of taxes, but it gives everyone an opportunity to move ahead. It gives everyone an opportunity to get started. It develops our economy. It'll make it a lot easier, and it'll certainly make it a lot easier for people like in my situation. And there's lots of us, and the number is growing. I'm just going to close with one last comment on that that's topical or local. There's a whole process taking place right now in this province called ESIA transformation. ESIA is what the Nova Scotia government calls welfare. Well, they've been sending out surveys and doing all kinds of things. I haven't responded to most of it. I view it as a bit of a nonsense exercise. But here's the ESIA transformation that I want to see. I want to see ESIA abolished. I wanted to see it redundant and replaced by a universal basic income. That's the ESIA transformation I'm waiting to see. That's the one that's going to make a real difference for the people of this province and the people of this country. So I hope that our various levels of government, the Nova Scotia government, the federal government, municipal governments, Aboriginal governments, can get together on this and figure out a way to make it happen. I'm all for doing a pilot project, but I would much rather see us roll the damn thing out and get going. And I agree with what Mike said. The time is now. This is the right time. Moments like this don't come along very often, this sort of serendipity moment where basically so many Canadians are suffering from the income inequality and not being able to make ends meet. So many Canadians are looking for a solution to that. We can do it. And it's time that we did it. So thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Enjoy the rest of the day. There's going to be a lot of good speakers talking about various aspects of this. And it is, you know what? Like many government programs, the devil is in the details. So let's pay attention to what's being said. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Wayne. We really appreciate you giving this talk and sharing with us your experiences and your knowledge and your enthusiasm about basic income and starting our talks out in this inspiring way.